Welcome to Soul Sparks with Saima, the space where depth meets discovery. Today we are exploring a question that many seekers quietly carry. Why do we feel stuck even after learning all the right tools for healing? So joining us today is our amazing guest Samantha Kane, a holistic life coach and conscious guide who helps others reconnect with their higher self through somatic healing, shadow work, and spiritual embodiment. She is here to help us understand what keeps us from truly moving forward when we already know what to do. So Samantha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Saima. Thank you so much.
You're warmly welcome. And it's my pleasure to have you here, Samantha. So Samantha, what inspired you to explore this paradox, like having all the tools yet still feeling stuck?
Well, because it's such a human experience, isn't it? With, everybody going through life in this challenging yet beautiful way, and just having some tools that work for you might not necessarily work for someone else. So it really is trying to find a creative way and a realistic way that is going to work for yourself. We don't want to, mimic everybody else or be a carbon copy of others. It is wonderful to take inspiration from other people, but at the end of the day, it's what works for you, yourself as an individual, and personally, what's realistic, what's practical, what you're really, really, truly going to use. And what happens is in life, from a young age, we get programmed from our parents, from society, from education, from schools, from jobs later, once we start in the workplace, that we start doing things the way other people do things, and we're trained. And then we realize that a lot of those ways don't align with our soul and what we really want for ourselves. So it's up to us to try to take those pieces away as they don't fit any longer, and then design and create the tools that do work for us, the things and the ways of being in our life that are going to really have a higher impact for us personally.
That's such a meaningful reflection, I would say. And I really appreciate how you broke down the difference between knowing what to do and actually feeling ready to move forward. That gap is something so many of us quietly wrestle with, and the way you described it really highlights how complex personal growth can be, even when all the tools are right in front of us. So, building on that, I'm curious to know that, do you think awareness alone sometimes becomes a kind of comfort zone?
Yes, we sometimes can be our worst enemy, right? We get into so many things that, as I mentioned, we don't align with anymore. And that feeling of being stuck, it happens to all of us. And this was such a telling project, I guess is one way to put it for me, in my work in life coaching and conscious guidance with others, because it is so relatable to everyone and anyone. It's something that we all go through. There's no way, I don't know why I always say this, but I guess it's more true now than ever. We have AI and we have Chat GPT and we have, it's like us versus the robots, right? And all the automated systematic things on top of all the ways that we were programmed. So now it's getting even more convoluted, and it might even be noisier out there, I would say, and more challenging for us to hear our own voice, which is why it's imperative and crucial for us to get to know ourselves the best way that we can, truly face ourselves, get really real, be really honest, know what we want out of life, find out what our soul's purpose is, which, by the way, does change over time. And so we need to learn to navigate through all these ways so that we can more quickly, more efficiently, more smoothly learn how to step away from being stuck And one more thing I'll add is being stuck is actually not as terrible as many people might think it is. Sometimes being stuck is actually a sacred pause. It's something that it means our body and mind have not caught up to the work that we're actually doing. So it's also a process of alignment, I would say. And it's being stuck is nothing we should have judgment about. It's just a place that we need to feel into and learn to be patient with the alignment of integrating what we're learning at that very moment.
That's really a refreshing way to look at it, like you explained, Samantha. I really appreciate how you reframe being stuck not as a failure or, something to rush out, but as a part of the realignment process. It's so true that those moments of stillness or uncertainty can actually be where the deepest growth happens. And I think a lot of people out there will find comfort in hearing that it's okay to be in that space for a while.
Yes, absolutely. And we get so down on ourselves so many times with timelines, right? Like, I should be here, I should be doing this is the order of a semblance that my life should take. I need to grow up, learn what I want to do, get married, have kids, have a career. And what I'm finding actually, which is super refreshing, talk about refreshing, is I have quite a few friends that are doing things so differently. They're, and when I speak on programming, it's really something that I see people breaking free from, and it's making me so happy. So all this talk about being stuck, yes, we do, but we need to remember this is not a cemented footing. We need to remember that our footing can be super light, like a feather. We can be moving through things with more flow. We are never actually really truly stuck. In fact, I don't even like to use that word very much at all. I try to not avoid it, but use different types of wording or adjectives because wordplay is important. That's another facet of people's lives they should be paying attention to, is what types of words and phrasing and tone they allow in their life, whether they're thinking it, saying it, or even feeling it as they're doing it. Wordplay is super powerful. The words are spells. So the way we are entrusting our language is a very big deal. It's bigger than people think. There's magic behind it, but it could also be a curse or just simply negative if we don't use it the right way. So we don't want to, like I say, cement ourselves that we're feeling stuck on something. We need to know that if we feel like we've been in a position for quite a long time and we just can't get out of it, and it feels like quicksand or like a mud pit, we just can't even get one foot out of that. If there's a will, there truly is a way. There's always unlimited pathways for creativeness. There's ways to get yourself up and out of situations. You just have to be willing to expand your mind into a limitless kind of space. A lot of people tend to get very narrow-minded when they feel pigeonholed or cornered in a moment. And this is precisely the time to step out of that bird brain thinking and to really try to see things from a different vantage point and get a fresh perspective. That's really what's going to help.
That's a powerful perspective, and it's according to me, it's really an uncomfortable truth. I would say we all need to face. Yes. Now, you emphasize embodiment in your work. So, what does true embodiment look like in practice?
Yes. So embodiment means that you are not just spiritually bypassing. You're not just thinking about doing the work, but not really doing it. You're not saying you're doing the work, but not really doing it. You are actually truly from your heart, from your soul, you are really doing the work. You are not only practicing it, you're making mistakes. You're also getting to some points of self-sabotage because that's just part of the game. It's part of the process. And we find ourselves in our awkward states, but those are always brief moments. We do get past those moments. And those are kind of the quirky times that we need to ask ourselves, is this just an obstacle asking me, like the universe saying, is this really what I think I want still? The universe will always throw these plays at you. The universe will throw challenges at you, and these obstacles will make you ask yourself that question. Do I really think I want what I thought I wanted in the beginning? Sometimes that answer might change. And sometimes it's the same, and then you forge forward. But in that meantime, place where you're trying to find your footing, yes, it's awkward until you practice it so long that it does start to have a little bit more comfort. It finally feels good. You move through and move past that awkward phase. And then once it's actually becoming more of an automated practice, but in a really good way, this is where you're actually starting to integrate, meaning you're not only implementing and doing the work, but you're actually feeling it with your soul. You start to feel very aligned. It's a very mind, body, soul moment, and your spirit is completely uplifted. It's something where when you even think about it, just at the thought alone, you know that this is the right thing to do for you at this time.
That's indeed a powerful explanation, Samantha. And I really appreciate how you broke down embodiment as something we live through presence and awareness and not just something we think about. And the way you put it makes it feel very real and accessible, I would say. Like it's something anyone can start to practice with small intentional ways. Now, from that perspective, I'm interested to know now that how does embodying this awareness shift the way we experience or respond to emotions and triggers?
So, good question. So, with emotions and triggers, these are things that we must go through. We have to. As human beings, there's no way around it. And what I see out there in my coaching practice and just in my own personal life with friends and family and even strangers that I cross paths with is people try to avoid and deflect and project. And in those moments, that's okay because we all do that, but those should be boomeranged back and turned back into a reflection, an introspection, and then an integration of a new higher pattern, something that really aligns better with you. That's a better habit and a deeper practice of aligning a healthier way to be. With triggers, this is such an important, integral thing to look at for every single person. This is something that is so unique and individual. Everyone has a different experience. I might be scrolling through something on social media where this particular person and what they say doesn't bother me at all. But my best friend completely bothers her. She is triggered every single time. And in fact, she probably or may want to block them or mute them, So there are different things that happen to different people depending on their makeup, their DNA, their emotional regulation, their lack of or use of. And so this is the integral part, that the more and deeper you get to know yourself, the better you can get to not only viewing and having access into these moments and viewing them as the observer, not just feeling attacked, because we need to understand that emotions are visitors. They don't stick around. They're just making a guest appearance, showing us what we need to see. And then we can move on from that and say, oh, okay, well, why do I feel this way? What is this trying to show me? And then we can move on accordingly. This is part of growth. This is part of self-discovery. And also, this keeps happening over and over throughout our lives. So if we don't get our bearings with emotions, with emotional regulation, with triggers, and knowing how to better cope and manage all of the aforementioned, then we're just gonna really not do so great in life. We're gonna have such a harder time. But on the flip side, if we do get to learn all these things and really find the proper tools that work for us to an advantage, then we can live a much more blissful, peaceful existence.
You have articulated that so clearly, Samantha. And the way you explain embodying awareness makes it feel so tangible and lived and not just theoretical, I would say. And I really admire how you bring such depth and authenticity to these ideas. It's really inspiring, to hear you break it down with such clarity and heart.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, let's talk about the shadow side. So, can you share that how does facing the parts we resist most help us move beyond stuckness?
Yes. So when we face ourselves, we start to see the very parts of ourselves that we don't like. We start to poke around and find out. We start to see, okay, there is this side to me. I don't like the way that I speak to this person. I don't like the way I do this thing over and over again. Oopsie, is this a pattern? I guess it is. Now you're recognizing it. So shadow work is a space where we can learn to recognize the dark spaces of who we are. And it's in our personalities. It's part of who we've become. But I would also say that just because something has become part of a personality trait doesn't mean that it's going to always have to be there. I like to think of life in a way where we can always make changes. We can always create space for something new and something different if it's going to be something that's going to align better in a healthier way. We want to pull from the toxicities of the ways that we're being. And the truth is, it's a hard truth and it's a hard pill to swallow, but every single one of us, including myself, has horrible patterns, horrible behaviors, horrible toxic traits, and traumas and habits that exist. And some of us like to think that, not necessarily that you're perfect, but some people think that they're just, living life and everything's fine and they don't really have problems. And these are usually the people that like to project on others because they just don't want to face themselves. But that's the opposite of what shadow work is. Shadow work is the space where you're supposed to turn inward and ask yourself the tough questions and get really real. And then say, okay, now that I know for sure this is something that I do, how can I go about doing it a different way? And that's where the practice comes in. And there should never be judgment in this space at all. Again, you always want to come from a place of being an observer. You want to be in a place where you are allowing yourself grace and you are allowing yourself the courtesy to move through these pathways, even if it takes a little longer, even if you feel disenchanted, even if you feel ashamed or guilt or any other negative feeling. It's a must, because moving towards a place of peace in your life is the highest honor you can give yourself. So why would you allow yourself to stay in these toxic spaces? Also, in the end, or not in the end, but to end this piece, I would say that there's always other things that come on board. There's always other things that we realize about ourselves. So if we don't handle our mess from our side of the street and start to clean it up, little by little here and there, we're going to have more of a pile up. And that corner is going to be super dirty, super dusty, super messy. And that's not a way to live. And that's definitely not a way to find or live with peace. So if you want to get into a better space for yourself and live happier and more free, then you do need to do some shadow work here and there, occasionally, or just as often as you can, and really be honest and really keep it real.
I really like that perspective, Samantha. And I love how you frame that, not as a place to dwell in negativity, but as an opportunity to pull out the lessons, like you explained, even from the toxic behaviors or past trauma, and use them to create meaningful change. It really highlights at how confronting the shadow can be a transformative process rather than something to fear. That's really great the way you explain that. Now, with that in mind, what's one gentle way someone could start embracing that shadow without feeling afraid?
One way I would say is to kind of go back a little bit to what I said previously, is just to be the observer and not to judge yourself. So when you are in this space of thinking and consuming all this information about yourself, there's a lot of feelings that are going to come to the surface. And this is the sticky and tricky part, but it's also the part that we have to go through to get to the other side. So this is an area where it's a must, it's a requirement to get through, and we all have to do it. We all should do it, and it's worth it. That's the thing, is to know that even when something is hard and challenging, if it's something that you know is going to be a healthier way to exist instead of, surviving, you're actually thriving in your life, then this is very, very worth it. So again, I would say it's just coming from it at an angle where you are very open and you're kind of like in a dream where you're looking down at yourself, but you're not being yourself. If you had a bird's eye view of yourself, but instead of a dream, it's real life, and you're looking at this view of you and you're seeing who you are, and you're kind of detaching from the emotion of it. That doesn't mean you aren't supposed to go through the feelings and emotions and shadow work, but for this very moment, to actually see yourself in a different light, this is very helpful. It's the place of the observer, not from a place of guilt and judgment. And this space will allow for more openness, more opportunity, and for a better viewing of the real, honest situation at hand that you're looking at, because a lot of times it's very hard for us to see what other people might see about us. For some reason, it can be very, very clear in someone else's eyes who you are being. But when we look at ourselves, we might not see ourselves in such a negative light. And it might be a little scary, but that's okay. Fear should be turned into excitement about the process of knowing that we are going to get somewhere so much better. Any kind of self-discovery and improvement is well worth all of the pain, struggle, and challenge that we have to get through.
Yes, I completely agree with that. That the idea of simply observing without judgment, like you said, is so simple, yet so profound. It really takes the pressure off and makes the process of facing our shadow, feel safe and compassionate. And I think it's such a powerful reminder that growth doesn't have to be harsh or forceful. It can start with just noticing ourselves with kindness, like you explained.
Yes, exactly. Because we could really burn out in this self-growth arena. For people like me, constantly, all day, every day, I'm thinking how I can improve this, how I can do that. But sometimes we just need to pause and let it be. Let that energy sit, actually lie with it and feel it and let it flow through, because it's a way more profound moment in someone's life if they're going to not force but flow. There's a big difference.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. And I'm sure that's gonna be surely beneficial for all our listeners out there. Now, for someone listening who feels like they have done all the work but still feel numb or blocked, what's your message to them? Like one short message you would like to leave for them?
Yes. I would say, I think I mentioned this earlier, that sometimes stuck is more of a sacred pause. And that just means that it's alignment in progress. So allow yourself some grace, because you are currently loading like a computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I again love how you reframe being stuck not as a failure, but as a part of alignment and progress. It's really comforting reminder that even, when things feel stagnant or numb, there's movement happening beneath the surface, and your perspective really makes that peace feel valid and purposeful, I would say. And Samantha, you have helped us see that healing isn't about collecting tools, it's about becoming the work. And to everyone listening, maybe it's time to stop fixing yourself and start feeling yourself, because your freedom has been waiting beneath the surface all along. So keep shining and keep sparkling.